Hello and welcome, friends. It is me. This evening before sunset, I will be sharing a scary story. This scary story is not necessarily a scary story, but it is still considered a scary story because we will be seeing live footage of an abandoned property, and this is just not any property. This is an abandoned tuberculosis hospital in Rockaway, Queens. The hospital name is Neoponsit Beach Hospital, and it even had its very own power plant at the abandoned beach hospital. For those who may not know what a power plant is, a power plant is also referred to as a power station, and sometimes referred to as a generating station or generating plant. It is an industrial facility for the generation of electrical power. Power stations are generally connected to an electrical grid, and it is an electrical utility generating station. I am sure if we walked inside this abandoned hospital at nighttime, it would be scary for sure. I unfortunately cannot go inside the abandoned hospital for safety and legal reasons. If you want to hear more about this scary story, please be sure to stay and watch until the end of the video. Also, do not forget to subscribe, like, comment, share, and enable your notifications to stay aware with me. For the past 20 years, this former nursing home in the Rockaways has sat abandoned and deteriorating ever since the city unexpectedly evacuated 282 elderly residents in the middle of the night back in September 1998. Like previously stated, the hospital has stood abandoned for over 20 years after its patients were secretly relocated in the dead of night. The abandoned property spans 14 acres and dates back to 1915, when it was built with designs by McKim, Mead, and White. The Oceanside and Oceanfront View Hospital was originally used to treat children who had tuberculosis cases. The fate of the center remains unknown, though it has been appraised for $40 million, and it is definitely being eyed by developers for luxury oceanfront apartments. The exact Neoponsit Beach Hospital is located on the south side of Rockaway Beach Boulevard, just west of 149th Street, with Rockaway Beach at its southern edge. The hospital sits at the southeast corner of the Jacob Riis Park, adjacent to the residential portion of Neoponsit, which is actually a very nice area in the Rockaways. Beautiful community, very beautiful houses. Therefore, the hospital is located in the Rockaways, which is in Queens, New York City. The exact address of the hospital is 149-25 Rockaway Beach Boulevard, Rockaway Park. Therefore, the hospital is located off of 149th Street on Rockaway Beach Boulevard in Rockaway Park. If you are driving there, you can park in a huge parking lot diagonally across the street. I also saw many people waiting for the buses, but I was not sure what bus and which bus number it was. If you take New York City Transit subways, it is the last and furthest stop on the A train to Rockaway Beach. The hospital is on the Rockaway Peninsula facing the Atlantic Ocean on the southern part of Long Island. The whole entire hospital is completely fenced in and fenced around the whole entire perimeter of the hospital with a big tall fence, and it has barbed wire like a prison on the very top of the fence going around the whole entire perimeter of the hospital. While I was investigating the hospital, we noticed that there was a car with its lights on the property sitting in front of the hospital. So it was either trespassers or maybe it was security. As previously stated, emerging and appearing over the beach in the Rockaways, located in Queens, New York City, is the abandoned Neoponsit Beach Hospital, also known as the Neoponsit Children's Hospital. The hospital once served as a tuberculosis. I always trip up over this word. Tuberculosis sanatorium and operated from 1915 to 1955. And the main building was designed by the notable architectural firm McKim, Mead and White. Neponset Beach Hospital mostly operated on children, but by World War II, the hospital began to treat military veterans until the hospital's closure. The hospital was later converted into a home for the elderly, which created a nursing home for the aged that had Alzheimer's, and it closed in 1998. Around the start of the 1900s, the journalist Jacob Riis advocated for the creation of a children's tuberculosis hospital in the Rockaways to take pressure off the more prominent tuberculosis treatment centers in the city. Riis worked with an association for improving the condition of the poor, and he also worked with the New York City mayor at the time to create a hospital on the beach away from the hustle and bustle of the city. Riis soon became an influential spokesperson to lobby for the establishment of many of the city's parks and playgrounds, including the Neponset Beach Hospital. The park and hospital began development starting in 1907, but efforts were suspended until 1909 due to the disastrous panic of 1907, when the New York Stock Exchange fell nearly 50% from the previous year's peak. Before being transferred to the city, the hospital was built by the Association for Improving the Condition of the Poor, with support by the Neponset Realty Company and private sources. The hospital was funded by private sources and built by the association before being turned over to the city. The money had been raised by the association by 1906 and held in a trust. In order to raise the $250,000 needed for the hospital's construction, the association distributed pictures of Smiling Joe. Smiling Joe was a boy who was suffering from spinal tuberculosis at the time, and he was actually getting treatment in the nearby Seabreeze Hospital in Coney Island. For those of you who do not know, Coney Island is in Brooklyn, New York City. The boy appeared in association letters, newspapers, and magazines, and Theodore Roosevelt, who was the president at the time, and John D. Rockefeller paid visits to Smiling Joe. After seeing the boy, Smiling Joe, Rockefeller decided to contribute $125,000 to the project of the development of the Neponset Beach Hospital. Joe, aka Smiling Joe, from the distracted picture of Smiling Joe, which caught many people's attention. And although Smiling Joe was suffering with spinal trouble and he had tuberculosis, and he had to lie strapped to an iron frame in the photo, he still had the most beautiful and cheerful smile in that photo. The doctor took his picture and sent it out and broadcast it everywhere throughout the country. And, with an account of the work that he did, it was very successful. Money was coming in from left and right. And according to the New York Times, money came in with every mail from east and west, north and south. The newly opened hospital replaced the Seabreeze Hospital, as almost 50 children were transferred to Neponset Hospital, followed by children from other city hospitals, tenements, and orphanages. The main building was designed by McKim, Mead, and White in a U shape with a capacity of 122 patients, facing the beach, where porches and open air balconies facing the beach were there so that the patients could momentarily escape their painful reality. These little children in their two-wheeled carts and chairs, their wheelchairs, or crunches, or just dragging one foot after the other, slowly, without fuss, they would come to the big opening, front openings in the back of the hospital, which had decks and balconies and a big courtyard, and they would go down on the beach, go in the sand, and they would go in the ocean for sun baths, and they would actually bathe in the ocean, describes a 1930 article from the Brooklyn Eagle. For the next 2 decades, the hospital treated hundreds of young tuberculosis patients, giving them opportunities to bathe in the ocean and travel outside with supervision. In 1929, City Hospital's commissioner announced an expansion for the hospital that would double the hospital's capacity. According to a 1943 New York Times article, 104 patients were evacuated in accordance with an order by Mayor LaGuardia to close child care institutions in order to conserve oil during World War II. LaGuardia noted that if Neponset Hospital closed, 300,000 gallons of oil would be saved, which would lead to a 10% reduction of New York City's fuel oil. 2 years later, in 1945, the hospital reopened, but mainly only to veterans. The U.S. Public Health Service leased the hospital to treat veterans with tuberculosis for 5 years. In 1952, the Queens Hospital Center was created through the merging of Queens General Hospital and Triborough Hospitals, and Neponset Beach Hospital was absorbed into this new medical center that was happening. Yet despite talks of expanding Neponset Hospital into a general hospital, Neponset closed in 1955 as tuberculosis cases declined significantly in the 1950s. For the next few years, many New York agencies struggled to discover the best use for the building. New York City Parks Commissioner Robert Moses proposed expanding Jacob Riis Park onto the hospital land, replacing hospital buildings with sports fields and a swimming pool. The New York City Planning Commission actually approved this expansion, but the Board of Estimate overturned the plan. In the meantime, others proposed converting the hospital into housing, while others proposed turning the building into a nursing home. By 1959, construction began on the main building and nurses' residence, and in 1961, the Neponset Home for the Elderly was opened. For the next 3 decades, the nursing home cared for elderly patients, mostly with Alzheimer's. Efforts to move HIV/AIDS patients to wings of the Neponset Hospital for the aged in the 1980s failed due to high risk of disease transmission. Yet in 1998, the renamed Neponset Healthcare Center abruptly emptied the center of 282 elderly patients in the middle of the night. As a result of a Labor Day storm, the building suffered major damage to the point that city officials thought the building would collapse. As a result of this sudden move, 2 patients died. A report by the federal government concluded that the evacuation was unnecessary and that health officials not only endangered patients' lives, but also lied to them about a speedy return to Neponset Hospital. Like previously stated, disaster struck, though, on September 7, 1988, when a strong storm battered the Rockaway coastline. The Neponset Hospital was badly hit to the point where it thought that it was in major danger of collapsing. On orders of the mayor's administration, the elderly people of Neponset were evacuated in the middle of the night, piled onto buses with no word of warning to either patients or their families. They were bussed out to other nursing homes and hospitals under cover of darkness, and the other hospitals that they took them to were in Manhattan. The nighttime evacuation was so alarming to the ill patients that 2 residents actually died from the ordeal, and another patient disappeared for weeks. As reported in the Daily News, it was just chaos. Before any notice was given to the residents, which was required by law, they were told to pack their bags and get out. The hospital, though, didn't collapse. In fact, it's still there and has slowly decayed over the past 24 years. Conspiracy theorists have said that the sudden evacuation was a plan to develop the prime beachfront location into a hotel. Whether there was an underhanded motive at work to develop the hospital for private gain remains unknown. It has certainly survived the extreme battering the Rockaway suffered in Hurricane Sandy. But in the original hospital deed, it stipulated that the property could only be used as either a hospital or public park. And with no plans in place for either a restoration of the hospital or a conversion to a recreational space, the Neoponset Hospital has slowly been allowed to fall apart through neglect. The tragedy of what happened to patients who died is rarely reported or known about. Little to no redevelopment of the property has occurred. The Neoponset Adult Day Healthcare Hospital relocated to nearby Rockaway Park in 2004, but the Neoponset Hospital, still remains abandoned, despite numerous efforts to develop luxury homes on the property to the dismay of local residents. A security guard booth remains in operation even during the coronavirus times along the entrance of Rockaway Beach Boulevard. The hospital has remained closed for the past 24 years, standing empty through two major hurricanes, Irene and Sandy, in 2011 and 2012, and countless other storms as well. The beachfront property has continued to be a haven for the city's queer and trans communities, although tussles with police are not uncommon at all. So also, just to let you guys know, when I visited the Neoponset Beach Hospital this evening, when we walked to the back part of the hospital, there were people actually naked on the beach. I'm not sure if this is allowed or not. I don't think it is, but I was just minding my business. I did not say anything, and a naked person actually came over to my boyfriend when I was filming and asked to pet my dog. Luckily, my dog is very shy and skittish, and she never lets any other dog get near her. She doesn't let any other human pet her. So it was just funny. It was definitely an experience visiting the Neoponset Hospital. So it has a lot of great history, so I definitely recommend whenever you're visiting Rockaway, Queens, it's definitely a historical site to visit. And also, we don't know if it'll ever be fully demolished or if they will completely, take it away. To completely break it down and rebuild something new. So I definitely think that I really am inspired to travel and visit historical places, especially places that are abandoned as well, because it makes it scary and fun. So if you enjoyed my video, please don't forget to leave a like and comment your favorite part of the video. Let me know your thoughts, and please enable your notifications to stay aware with me. Until next time, friends, ciao!